Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Adult Chair on rashpixel.fm. I'm Pete Wright, and I can't quite believe where I am right now. I'm in Seattle, which shouldn't come as a shock to anybody. It's a fair city in the Pacific Northwest, my territory, but I'm sitting here with Michelle and Graham Chalfants together, and they're so cute. They're like bookends.
I don't think we've ever been called bookends before.
I don't think so. And we're staring you down, live and in person.
It's really uncomfortable. This is, and I think what many people don't know, that we've been working together on and off the podcast for 3 years or so, something like that, and we have never met face to face until this very moment. And this very moment happens to be at the pool of a Seattle Marriott at the airport.
And so this may be the very last podcast ever. Now that you've met in person.
Because we're done.
It's done.
We've accomplished everything we wanted to do, and we're done. So we're going to be talking about you guys today. Aren't we lucky?
That causes a pause.
Can you hear with your mic? It's facing your shirt.
Yeah.
He's an expert. He knows what he's doing.
I guess you're an expert.
Do you know what this is about? You know what this is? Why you do this?
Why? Should I be doing that too?
Plosives.
Oh, the puff.
Plosives, yeah. If you face the mic down, I'm not breathing.
Should I be doing that?
You don't have any plosives.
Oh.
I have the plosives.
Okay.
You're doing fine.
Okay, good.
I'm keeping all of this in. This is podcast gold.
Yeah.
This is why people tune in.
This is the director's cut afterwards.
So it was maybe, was it last year sometime? You made the mistake, Michelle, of making a comment of teasing a podcast that we were going to do with Graham.
Yes.
And you never came through. For the longest time, you didn't come through. We had other things to do.
Yep.
And people are starting to get itchy, right?
Actually, I didn't have other things to do, but Graham was avoiding, I feel like.
No.
I asked him.
Oh,
this was the deal.
This is where it gets good.
You randomly used me as that bad example all the time, and I thought I needed to come on to set the record straight. So this is going to be to counter all those stories. I am the perfect husband. I do no wrong.
You know, I usually when I refer to myself in my role on the podcast, I usually like to call myself the Charlie Rose. Today, it may be the Maury Povich. I'm pretty excited about this.
That's true.
Yeah, Montel Williams. We
There
may
you
throw
go.
things.
There you go.
There aren't any surprise guests coming on, are there?
Wait till you see who I've got backstage. So frame it up, Michelle. What would you like to do to put Graham on the spot today?
Oh my
wait.
gosh.
Do I get to do the same?
I'm sure that didn't come out right.
Might be like a presidential debate.
Yeah.
Well, I don't even know what to say. We've talked about having Graham on, and you're right, I have used you for a lot of my examples of people that are not in their adult chair and how much I am sitting in my adult chair in relationship. Yeah, I wanted to have you on so we could sit and talk about a little bit about how our relationship has changed since bringing this model into the home and into our partnership, into our marriage. That's what we're going to be talking about today, Pete.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the marriage. Let's go ahead and get into it then. I've got my pince-nez glasses on, and
Dr. Pete.
I'm ready. Dr. Pete's ready.
We've been married 20 years this November.
Okay.
Yeah, long time. 2 decades.
Yeah.
Yep.
How is it? How would you characterize the arc of the relationship when thinking about the way you communicate together, Graham?
Well, me being a complete novice to this whole, like a typical guy, right? We don't think about the relationship. We just move forward. I think we've gone through the normal arcs of marriage. You know, that 7-year itch or whatever you want to call it, where things are good, and then all of a sudden things are bad, and then somehow we stay together. You know, push through that 7-year mark, and then they get better again. So I think we're probably pretty typical of most couples. I think that the difference is if you look at a up and down of these arcs, the 7-year itch is bad, and then it comes back, it's pretty good, and then it gets bad again. I think that the adult chair, I think at this part of our relationship, it's starting to level out. So we don't have the ups and downs like we used to, specifically the downs, I think. Mm-hmm. So that's one observation I would make, is that I think we're very typical of most couples, but that I think the adult chair and just Michelle's, what she does for a living, has helped us.
Well, that's actually an interesting question, I think, for me. When I think about you two as a couple and what you do for a living specifically, how how do you have a memory of when you started thinking about your relationship and your communication in terms of the adult chair? Is that a thing that is a sense memory for you as a couple?
Yeah, if I just may say this about, you're talking about like every 7 years, we, and I would think all people and couples have this, where every 7 years is like, around there, things aren't so good and then they get better. But what I would say, and I don't know if you would agree, it's the same issues that come up every 7 years, right? Like, it's not like we have all these different issues that are coming up. It's
Right.
the same issues
What
that
are
come
those
up.
issues?
Blame,
Yeah, blame.
communication breakdown,
Right.
taking credit for who's doing what in the house. And just to make a comment now, I'm actually getting a little stressed because I just realized we're coming up on the third, seventh year. 21 is next year. So let's hope that this adult chair is working and that we're not going to have the dip. Right now it feels pretty good, so I don't feel like we're on a downward slide heading towards 21.
But here's what I want to say about this. So for all these years, we'd go, like, again, normal. We'd go, everything's good, or is it just we're not really paying attention to what's not good, right? Mm-hmm. And then the things that aren't so good would come up in our face, and then we deal with it and move on. To me, what I would call that is living unconsciously, and we're doing things to avoid the conflict that naturally rises up in any kind of relationship. What the adult chair has done for me is it's made me more conscious, and then also more conscious in the relationship. So now when things are coming up, we talk about them, but there's a level of vulnerability that I have never stepped into before until learning this model. So we're talking about more real issues, things that might have been tough before. I know for me, many years, I'd walk on eggshells around certain topics because I knew that would trigger him. Where now I feel like, and again, it's not extreme where it's every single time, but for now I realize in the last few years, and I'm growing more into it all the time, I'm able to talk about things that I wouldn't want to talk about before because I'd be too afraid it would trigger you, and Graham would get triggered, and then he blows up his energy, then I would get small, and I would get very small and wouldn't want to talk, and so we're learning to break that dance and not dance in that same way that we have for all of these years. Would you agree?
Yeah, completely. And I think that your point about when issues come up that require a couple to work together to communicate, that to use your terminology and the adult chair terminology is that you fall into your adolescent chair, you sit there and you get very quiet and you don't talk about it. My adolescent chair is that I, like you said, blow my energy up and I'll get very controlling, I'll get very loud, and that was kind of the dance that we would do together. And I think that's probably one of the big differences now is that if one of us slips in their adolescent chair, if I blow up, as opposed to you just shrinking and we have two adolescents sitting there, you've got the ability to move into your adult chair and talk to me and say, hey, don't blow up at me, let's just talk about this.
Right.
Whereas, and flip side, you may go into your quiet space, which usually drives me crazy. I don't like it when you withdraw and you're in your adolescent.
Right.
And as opposed to me then getting more controlling and trying to drag you out of that space, I can sit in the adult chair and let you know what you're doing. Say, hey, you're getting real quiet. We need to talk about this.
And then again, I would get to choose from my adult chair. We have choice. Do I want to talk to him about this or not right now? But also from the adolescent chair, it's not just, we have many, many defenses. And for me, I would get really small or I would yell and scream. Like there wasn't that in between where I was present with what was going on with me and I could see what was going on with him, and then I could speak to him from this, again, when we're in our adult chair, it's not airy-fairy, but it is more of a presence. It's more...
awareness.
Yeah, there's certainly an awareness there. I'm in my body when I'm talking to him. I don't feel small, and I don't feel big where I'm blowing myself up. I'm just me, but I'm fully in my power, and I'm speaking to him from that place. That has changed a lot. And that is what I notice. And I notice now when you're triggered, and you and I have talked about this too. I think I used this as an example on a previous show, by the way, Pete. But when he's triggered and he might come at me with something, I'm able to sit there now and listen. And I consciously have to say to myself, and you might have been doing this with me too, but I consciously sit and listen. Again, not every time, but it's a lot now. And I'm present, and then I can see through what's happening with him. And oftentimes, again, when we're triggered, it's not because I'm triggering something within him, so I can see through that projection. It's like I'm seeing through this whole illusion of what's really going on, and I'm realizing it's not mine, it's his. So I actually want to sit with him even more in this calm state because I know he's triggered, because I love him, and I want to be there for him, and I want to be that adult when he's obviously slipped into like this inner child part that's feeling, abandoned or shamed or something, but I might be the trigger, but I'm not doing that to him. It's an old wound that's within him. And in my adult, I'm sitting there being present. And that helps us to resolve things in a new way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. It goes back to one of the stories that you told long ago. One of the myriad examples of your relationship was when you were having trouble and you just said, I just need you to listen. You told him you just need to listen and just to touch your leg or something. And there was that experience of just know that there's presence. And it seems to me that one of the great gifts of your work in the adult chair is learning so clearly how to ask and to be present enough with yourself that you can ask what you need when normally you might not be present enough to be able to ask for what you need.
Yes.
And I think this relates to another question I'd like you to talk about too. So this is a compound question. Just try to keep up. One is, how have you found you have changed in your sort of awareness of how to ask for what you need when you're in a space of being frustrated on those 7-year periods, we'll say. And how have you found it your ability to adapt to this as a model in your marriage? This is the compound part of the question. We've talked a lot about, how we deal with our own work internally using the adult chair, but when you're sort of the other party being introduced to this and being sort of expected to learn the language and speak the language and be present in this, how has that experience been for you? So
sure,
you can take those questions in any order.
I won't remember half of them, but I'll start. So the first thing I want to say is, after hearing Michelle talk the last several minutes here about the different pieces, is I'm glad to realize what a gift I am to her. So I'm going to remember that. Next time that I'm flying off the handle and I'm acting like a baby, I'm going to remember that I'm the gift in this situation. And I hope she can do the same. And I'm glad this will be recorded for posterity on the podcast.
I'm actually going to create a ringtone out of that, so you can do with that as you please. Yeah. I'm the gift to you, I'm the gift to you, I'm the gift to you.
I think that the bigger part for me about all the adult chair, and even prior to that, a lot of the work Michelle did that led up to the adult chair, is the awareness that I'm, for lack of a better term, stuck in a moment. And so for me, a big one is stress on Sundays, that I know I've got work starting and I'm feeling like I'm behind already, and that stress will then come out as control of Michelle and control of the boys, or just anger, for goodness sake. And so I think that, and this kind of plays in the second part of your question, but the adult chair creates a mental model. And I like to think of how Michelle works with her clients with the 3 chairs. And if I'm able to imagine sitting when things are going terrible, when I'm frustrated and I'm mad at Michelle because she didn't do something right, or the kids, or whatever it may be, or just normal Sunday stress, if I can even just get the visual of being in that middle chair, that adolescent chair, for me that's huge. And Michelle will talk about this, is that once you become aware that you're in the adolescent chair, I think for a great part you're now in the adult chair because you're observing it.
Right.
And I think that's frankly the basis behind mindfulness, is that you become aware and you're not stuck in the middle of that emotional storm. So for me, again, a lot of the prior work Michelle did, but leading the adult chair, the nice part about the adult chair is that it gives us a common language, and it gives me a mental language or mental template where, as opposed to just being angry at Michelle, and again, I don't always do this. Many times I'm just being the gift versus being in the right chair, but is that if I can step back even for a split second and be like, whoa, this is my adolescent coming out, the one that's scared of something on Sunday, and this is the way I react. Or Michelle does something that pushes my buttons. She's critical of me, whatever it may be, is that I can realize that I've slipped in that adolescent chair. It's huge. I mean, it's a complete, what I would call like a state breaker. Like that state I'm in, which is not a good state to be in, I'm able to break that state because now I realize where I am. And again, technically I would have stepped over and sat in the adult chair. Not that I can't just as easily slip back in the adolescent chair, but I think that the more that I'm able to realize what chair I'm in, and actually to move over, and as Michelle said a few minutes ago, to say, you know what, Michelle, I just need to talk to you about this. And to your question earlier, Pete, to be able to say, I need this from you. And to be a male, and to be a male that really was brought up his entire life because of different situations with parents, etc., one that has always done everything on my own, it's hard for me to say, I think there's a feeling of weakness to say, I need you to do this for me. I need this from you. So to your point about being vulnerable, on a scale of 1 to 100, 100 being super Brene Brown vulnerable and 0 being whatever, I'm still below 50 on that vulnerability scale. I do not like to say I need things, but when you put in the context of the adult chair and that adults are able to ask for what they need, and frankly that creates a stronger relationship, I would say that I mentally have it down now, and now I'm working on pulling it down to the heart so it becomes my natural reaction versus just, oh yeah, mentally I should do this, that it becomes a reaction that I can just go to Michelle without thinking and be like, hey, I really need this from you right now. Because mentally it feels great. When I'm in a scared adolescent chair spot, it's more difficult.
I have a lot of notes here.
You're big. I notice you've been scribbling furiously.
I'm feeling very vulnerable. She scribbles when I'm talking. What did I say wrong?
Take notes in your normal conversations?
It might be. Yes,
I do sometimes.
Yeah. She's like, hold on a second. Let me take a note on that.
I got to write this down. This would be really good for a blog.
So I hope the rest of the vacation still goes well.
You guys got a lot of days together.
We sure do.
One thing that the word that keeps coming up would be needs, that you've said, and you've said, Pete. One thing that I've noticed as far as living in the adult chair in a relationship is that needs are now being met. And not only are they being met, but I now know what they are, and even Graham knows what they are, what his are. And I realize when we live in the adolescent chair, we're living in such a reactionary place all the time. We don't know what we need. We're simply trying to fix what's going on. And with men, and women too, for sure, but I think men have this agenda to fix their partner, right? So whether it be a marriage or boyfriend, girlfriend, it doesn't matter.
And I think agenda might be a kind of a loaded term. It's a job. It's like part of the role of, it's not manipulative. It's just instinct.
Right. So men, or I know at least with Graham and I'm just going to use a generalization, I guess, and just say people in relationships, typically the men are trying to fix us. So when we're, as a woman, if I'm off and I'm just feeling sad, or if I'm feeling whatever, any sort of negative emotion, he wants to ride it on his horse and fix me up. Yep. So I'm not so sad, or I'm not so, depressed about whatever.
Can I just stop going for a second? That is the hardest thing that I fight with the hardwiring of my brain.
Yep.
Is mentally, I know that when you're upset about something, that I should be there for you and ask what you need from me, or just listen. And my natural caveman instinct is to jump in and fix the problem. And so I'm just saying, of all the work that we do together in the adult chair and everything else, that part is probably the hardest hardwiring that I fight, is that, and I do think it's hardwired in men, that we are problem solvers, and most women do not want their problem solved, at least not initially. They want to be heard.
Yes.
And boy, that is killer for me.
And I just want to blast this out so every single man can hear me now. If men don't listen to anything else in this whole show today, hear this. Uh-huh. We want to feel like we are heard. Period. We don't want to be fixed. If I want help, I'm going to ask for it. And that's what has helped us a lot. I remember we were in the kitchen and I said to you, oh, I've got this going on, Graham, yada, yada, yada. And he's like, oh, well, I know what you should do. And he starts giving me all these ideas on how to fix it. And I just looked at him and I said, I don't want that. I'm going to tell you what's going on with me. And here's what I want you to do. So this is what I call the setup. And I've learned this from the adult chair. So I teach this to my couples all the time. What do I need from him as I'm going to tell this problem or this story that I have going on? So I'll say to him, like you were referring to before,
right.
Pete, I'll say, here you go. I'm just going to go ahead and say this. All I want you to do is be quiet and don't say a word. Just listen to me. And he's like, that's it?
Yeah, and if the listeners, the women listeners who have male partners, spouses, get nothing else out of this whole podcast, I would say that setup idea, that you preface that I'm going to tell you something that I'm upset about, and all I want you to do is listen to me. that would be huge, because if you did that, I would be 90% better, because my problem is you just start going on about your problems in your day, and I don't have a cue that says, my brain doesn't give me the setup, so I naturally launch into my normal mode. Now, someday you may get to a point where you'll say that 20 times in a row, and I'll finally be like, I don't need the setup anymore. But I'm not there yet.
But
so
see,
it does take some
what's so
reminding.
Interesting about that is that what you're saying there, what you're reflecting is that the setup is an indicator that this is the hard part for you, right?
Yes.
This is where shutting up is the hardest part of that conversation. And it's good to know when that's coming.
Yeah, exactly. But when we're in this adult chair, we're both conscious, and or I'm hoping that you're conscious when I know I'm conscious, and I'm consciously saying, this is what I need from you. I need you to sit here. I need you to listen to me. I need you not to say a word until I'm done. If I need help, I'm going to ask for it. But right now, I want you to be really present with me, which means don't look at your phone. Don't be looking out the window.
Which I don't do that stuff. I just launch into solving the problem. I'm just saying this for other people
that might be listening. Yeah. It's like, look at me. And again, I might say, I'm going to cry. And remember, this is not anything to do with you. I'm having a trigger because of something that, my friend said to me, but I just need you to listen and be really present with me. Maybe put your hand on my knee. And again, I set it up. So it's like, do I want you to sit on the couch with me? Do I want you to lay in bed with me? Do I want you to sit, across from me at the kitchen table? I'm in my adult. I'm conscious. I know what I need. You don't know what I need. I have to tell you what I need, which then tends to bring down your anxiety. Like, okay, now I got it. Right. Just sit and listen. And then I disclose whatever's going on. Many times you've said to me, oh my God, is that all? I'm like, oh wow, I feel so much better. And you're like, that's it, huh? And I'm like, that's it.
Yeah, but I totally agree. And the other challenge with this, though, is that the woman or whoever has the problem, let's just make it gender neutral, but the person who's got the problem, it's easy to sit here in this setting and say, I'm going to explain everything I need ahead of time. The reason you need it in the first place is because you're in the middle of some kind of emotional turmoil drama. So that's, I think, the challenge for your listeners is how do they're in the middle of something terrible in their life going on. They need someone to talk to. How do they stop and say, oh, let me explain to my spouse exactly what so that's the other part of the challenge is it's easier sitting here because you're not in a drama-filled place right now.
Right, but here's what I do. And I don't do it as much with you, but I have like 2 people in my life.
Once again, people. Pete, the cobbler's son. I don't do it with you, but I do it with the other people.
Sometimes.
There you go.
I do it sometimes. This terminology has saved me more times than not because I can call one of my go-to people. I have about 3. Or I've said this to you, Graham. I'll say, I just need an adult. Can you be my adult? Because I'm like drowning here. And I'm throwing out a life jacket, or I need a life, what is it called? The ring.
Life ring.
Life ring, whatever. So I'm asking you to throw me one because I'm swimming. I can't see what side is up. I need you to help me. So that phrase, I need an adult. Can you be my adult right now? Meaning, can you be present? Can you remind me what's fact and truth here? Because I am like spinning out of control. And that's when that other person can sit there. That's their cue. So I teach this to people in my sessions, like find 1 or 2 people that understand what this terminology means. So if you're spinning out of control, you can call that person, whether it be a partner or a friend, and say, I need an adult. And they know, boom, okay, I know what to do, which means they're not going to dive into my perspective. They're not going to go there with me. They're going to give me that higher perspective. They're going to rise above and go, okay, hold on, I'm seeing it from this other perspective. Let me go ahead and help you with that. Here's what I see that's fact and truth. You're missing this part. Let me help you with that. Okay? Or maybe it's just about being present.
That totally makes sense. I want to reflect on something that we were talking about, just the hard wiring of men, and because I don't want the message to be that it's so hard for men and women to be in relationships with each other. One of the things I keep thinking about is that as a man, when I am dealing with relationships with other men, and I need to, like my best friends, if I sit down and say, look, I'm really struggling here, I need to talk about this problem, they go into problem-solving mode with me immediately, just as I would expect them to, and they solve my problems, and it's okay. Because I'm hardwired to expect that.
Right.
And so that's what makes it even more challenging to be ready for that experience when I'm working with my own wife.
Yeah, and I agree with that, although I would flip it a little bit, and I think you just had your past podcast, or maybe it's not out yet, with Ted Klontz on the exquisite listening. And Michelle and I did a a weekend intensive with Ted on listening. And the one thing I realized, though, is that probably one of my very best friends in life who's a male, he and I will sit around and talk about the problems. And what I've realized, though, is I think I'm doing him a disservice by solving his problems versus some of his problems. I'd probably be better just to sit there and drink my wine and listen to him talk and let him get it out. Because I jump right in, well, yeah, but you didn't think of this, and you didn't, how about this? And so I would agree to some degree that it's good for men to solve problems, but I also think there's a real value, and probably males would be better off in general if we could also just listen and let the other person feel heard.
Well, and I would agree with that. I think that that's the value of the setup, right? Mm-hmm. Like even between men,
right?
To say, look, here, this is the problem I'm dealing with. I expect you, kind of unconsciously or subconsciously, to go into problem-solving mode because that's what I would do. But here's what I actually need. Yeah, like if we're present with ourselves.
And I'm in the business world 5 days a week, and what I would say is that that there's definitely always, in any of these situations, a time for problem solving. Michelle and I may have a big issue between us, and eventually we may need to solve that problem. What can we do to solve the problem? It's just usually not in the beginning when the other person's so upset. They want to be heard, They want to express, and frankly, for the other person that's just listening, God forbid, we may actually learn something by listening to them versus trying to solve their problems. You can solve the problems later or put processes in place, but initially, it's about, and Michelle always says this, that's how the connection's formed. That's how you can feel vulnerable to the other person. Just don't try to solve their problem, because it's almost telling them that what they're saying is not accurate, what you're saying is wrong. Let me tell you how to fix this.
Well, it makes us feel broken.
Right,
if someone comes at me and tries to fix me, it makes me feel broken, even more broken than I already feel. Mm-hmm. The most powerful thing we can do for another human being is witness them in their pain and be with them in their pain. When we do that and someone is able to express what they're going through and just have one other person sit there, creates a shift within, a shift within me if I'm in pain. I will come to my own conclusion on what I need to do in my life just by speaking it out loud. It changes when we speak it out loud versus trying to think it through. When I can speak it and I go, okay, this is what's going on with me, blah, 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 I'm really upset about this and I don't know as I'm talking, oftentimes, more often than not, I come up with the answer on my own. Like Ted Klant says, when someone is listening and they're just present, it's like an incubator. You're forming an incubator with me so that I'm able to just be present within myself. My answer is always within me.
Yeah.
It's
funny.
Within me.
It's engaging that another sense.
Yes.
You can spin in your head all you want, and often things make total sense in your head, and they're completely damaging and horrible.
Yeah.
And then you say it out loud, and it sounds so ridiculous.
Yep. Yeah.
Suddenly, I'm an adult when I hear myself speak my greatest pain out loud.
Yeah.
Because I totally get it.
Yep.
When I speak it out loud, and that's the value of that reflection.
But you have to be in the adult chair to sit and listen to somebody.
Yeah.
Because the problem, and this is probably why marriages are so much fun, quote unquote, is because when it's an issue that we both have emotional stakes in, it's between us. Again, it's easier for me if Michelle's upset at one of her friends or something in her career. It's probably much easier for me to listen to her and reflect back, etc., as opposed to when it's something that's between us. Then I think you naturally are drawn in the adolescent chair, and it becomes about defending your position. So,
in our quiet moments, after Graham and I have gone through something, whatever issue we've gone through, I'll ask him, what is it that you would have needed from me when you were feeling so bad about X, Y, or Z, whatever it is? And what do you normally say? You're like, well, I really just wanted a hug. And I'm like flabbergasted because when he gets off, like emotionally when he's off, he puts up the biggest wall. He's controlling. He's nitpicking. He's snipping at me and the kids. In other words, it feels to me like he's pushing us away. But what I've come to understand since learning this model is that underneath all of that is this little 0 to 6-year-old little inner child, little boy that only wants a hug, that wants to feel loved. And that emotion feels so bad and so intense that he's in his adolescence defending himself and pushing himself away. And pushing everyone else around him away. Right? Mm-hmm. That's what we do. We're human, right? We got to defend and keep ourselves safe, so it thinks. So what I've learned to do, I'm not an expert at this, but I am getting better at, and I did this just recently, is going to him when he feels, because he then triggers my own little inner child, because I had an uncle that used to, not that you rage, but...
Oh, I can rage.
He can rage. Sometimes. But, even just like raising your voice or being controlling reminds me of my uncle who scared the crap out of me when I was growing up. So when you get like that, he can give me a facial expression and I'm thrown into my wounded little inner child. And it scares me. So I get small when I see that particular look or when his voice goes in a certain tone. But what I've learned to do since learning how to sit in my adult chair now is to be present with his state, whatever he's going through. And I just did this recently. I was so proud of myself. I was like, I walked up to him and I think I put my hand, I can't remember where I was, but I put my hand on your shoulder and you were not in a good place. And you're doing that pushing away thing. And you said, no, I'm fine. And I said, I don't think you are. I just want you to know I really love you. And I don't remember if I gave you a hug, but I was there present with you and what you're going through. And the whole time in my mind, I'm going, this is not about me. He's this little boy. He's a little boy right now. He really just wants love. And he's pushing me away. And that's not real. It's like I was seen through the illusion, right? And then you softened. He softened. It was like I got through that wall because I was able to be there present with him. And I was like reinforcing like, hey, I really love you. I really love you. And I don't know what's going on with you. It doesn't matter, but I'm here with you. I just want you to know that. And I love you. Remember that? It was like 3 weeks ago or something.
Sure.
But I've done that a few times, and it's amazing because my brain is telling me, retreat, go in the other room, take cover. He's in a bad place. And
Which makes it worse for me, because again, if I really am, and I believe it, in this inner child that just wants to be hugged and just held, really, when I'm that upset, and that my reaction then of being controlling then puts you into this, you go in...
Scared little girl,
and you run away from me,
yeah.
Then I'm left there wanting the hug, and you have just left the room, which makes it even worse for me, because what I wanted most was for you to come closer, but my reaction sent you into your reaction, which sent you out of the room.
Right.
And it was just kind of a downward spiral, which now, again, when you're able to stay in your adult chair when I'm getting controlling and ask me what I need, and even if I don't know, because I'm a guy, I'm not great at knowing what I even need, and give me the hug, and then it just... The whole defense system kind of crumbles.
It literally melts. Someone has to jump into their adult chair, though. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Someone has to be conscious. And when we are defending back to back and reacting against each other, we're in the adolescent. And we're defending each other. I'm defending myself. He's defending against his emotions, what's going on within him. And I'm going to be right, and he's going to be right, and he shouldn't treat me that way. When people get stuck in that, it's a downward spiral. It doesn't solve anything. When one person can, it's literally like one person is waking up out of a dream, or figuratively, Graham, not literally.
And I'm glad I can do that like at least once out of every 100 times or so.
Yes. And I'm
glad to be there for the 1%.
And I do it once out of 5 times, Pete.
I was not informed that there would be math involved in this episode. But it gets back to to sort of the perennial, the perennial practice, right? That This is a practice. This is a muscle that you have to develop and you have to learn, or else you never learn how to step into the adult chair.
Right.
And also, I think what you guys are a model of is the value of the vernacular.
Exactly.
Right? It would be very difficult for you to even do that 1 out of 100 times, Graham, if you hadn't embraced the vernacular and embraced these concepts to come to a shared understanding.
Yeah.
The other thing that's powerful about this is that when it happens, like Michelle said a few weeks ago in the kitchen, when it happens once, it is the most powerful experience because you're used to going your separate ways and being angry for several days and just all that yuck. And when it happens a good way, when Michelle says, you just need a hug, and I get the hug, I mean, I feel immensely better. And also I'm realizing, I guess what you see is that there's a different way. But now you say, it doesn't have to be this normal dance we do back and forth, but it's this, wow, it could be that easy as just having the other partner actually there to support you. And again, not solve my problems. I'm still stressed because I've got a bunch of stuff to do on Monday morning, and it's Sunday afternoon, and I don't have anything done that I thought I need to get done. But just that feeling of comfort is emotionally, it's huge. Like I said, it almost feels like rewarding a dog for doing something good. Like, I'm a believer that guys are pretty simple. Like, that reward of feeling so good is a huge reinforcer for trying to do it that way the next time.
That little dopamine push.
Oh, it's a huge dopamine push, I think. Yeah.
Do you have something else, Michelle? Because we have Graham. I want to ask him another question.
Go ahead.
I don't like where this is going.
Well, no, I mean this is.
I'm just kidding.
Try to stay in your adult
the
chair,
one that's kind of that's really interesting to me, because I know in my experience with Michelle, I know who her friends are, right? Mm-hmm. I may not know her friends, but I know her friends, right? And I know that her world of the adult chair, I know how she uses the adult chair in her relationships. But your context shifts dramatically, I imagine, on Monday through Friday compared to Saturday, Sunday.
Sure.
And evenings, right?
Yeah.
How do you find the adult chair model kind of ruminating in the back of your head? How do you find that impacts you when you're not talking to Michelle?
Well, yeah, it's funny you say this. I was having breakfast with what I would call a mentor of mine, a guy in Nashville who's built a bunch of companies and been very successful. And so we get together periodically for coffee just to talk. And in the discussion he asked, he's met Michelle before, so how's Michelle's career going? And I was explaining the adult chair model, and he's running a technology company right now, and he said, is she doing this in the corporate world yet? And I said, no, she's not. I said, but the business is nothing more than relationships. And as you read all the stuff about how important emotional intelligence is in the work setting, I think that, again, in the home life, I'm the amateur by far. Michelle's the expert. I'm along for the ride. But in the business world, where most people don't talk this way, etc., I'm definitely above average as far as being able to understand where people are coming from. So when I see a conflict between members of a team in the business setting, I think my mind naturally goes to not just that they're behaving badly, but that they're in their adolescent chair. They're coming from some old wound they've had. So it's not about the situation as much as it is about, again, just where they're coming from. So I would say that this has helped me immensely. Again, I think I started from a pretty good point anyway. But, yeah, so when I'm dealing with conflict in a setting, I naturally think it's not about what's being discussed. This person is dragging stuff from when they were 12 years old or 8 years old. And not that I'm getting into counseling in the business setting, but I think it gives me much more empathy and also probably more openness to let them, like you said, talk it out versus me jumping in and telling them they're wrong or trying to fix them.
That's exactly what I was hoping you were going to say. And you dropped the E word.
The E word.
Empathy. I love it. I mean, that's exactly what... There is such enormous value to this work, not just in partner relationships. I think that's what I'm really excited to hear you talk about.
Yeah, if you read anything in the business literature right now, empathy, emotional intelligence, all that is huge, and become more important than IQ. And yeah, the adult chair, again, I think if nothing else, just puts a language around it. And I can imagine being in a boardroom setting, and you would actually have somebody maybe that's getting really fired up about something, and either they would catch themselves or someone else could use that same language, and they may physically get up from the chair they're sitting in the boardroom and move one chair over just in their mind to say, I'm now going to move to my adult chair where I'm going to, again, as Michelle says, look for the truth in it, not just the stories I'm creating, slow down, etc. And you may have the whole room, if it's a fired up discussion about something and you've got people that are really getting emotionally charged, the leader of that meeting may say, okay, let's all stop for a second. Let's all get up one chair and move to the next chair and mentally signify we're all going to try to get back in the adult chair. So, yeah, I could see it having a huge impact in the business world, which, again, is nothing but relationships in a different setting.
Sure. We're all just large children in ties.
Right.
One more point is that when someone else is triggered, if we can stay in our adult chair, we are remembering it's not about me. I think in general, we're good people. People are good, in their core. And we're not out to hurt other people intentionally. So when someone, whether it's in business or at home or children or whatever, friendships, when someone else is triggered, if I can remember it's not about me, then I can sit there in my adult and I can be present with them, have empathy with them. It changes the game completely in relationships.
So does that mean you're ready to start talking to big corporations?
Oh my God. No, this is not the first time this has come up.
I'm setting up an 800 number.
Maybe this is happening in the future, but we'll see. You never know where this can go. It's really just, first it's about learning, again, what key components are in each chair, and there aren't many. So mentally we grasp it, and then we begin to live it experientially And that's where the change happens in any relationship.
Yeah, I do. At my last job, which was less than a year ago, one of the people I worked with, she was talking about some of the issues she was having in her life, relationship-wise, outside the business setting. And so I said, we need to listen to Michelle's podcast. I said, it's free. Well, she just is over the top about it now and loves it. And so when we were still working together, something would be happening in the internal office dialogue or dynamics, and she would throw out, oh, that person is definitely not in their adult chair right now. So it was funny that it was just naturally kind of inserted itself into the business world.
It's such an easy metaphor. I mean, it's
Right.
such an easy metaphor to.
It is.
Yeah, which is the most powerful way to learn things, right?
Right.
Memorable and yeah.
That's right.
It's really easy to learn, but emotionally it takes it to another level for sure.
What do you think it's going to take for us to do a regular poolside podcast? Is there a spin-off series? Somehow we can go
We
tropical.
could do annually. Why don't we go to like Costa Rica
We
next
should have
time?
a board retreat.
I
The
actually
adult
We
chair
should.
board retreat.
and
in
I
Costa
actually
Rica.
Costa Rica
I've
or
been-
Bali. I have a client that wants to.
I've been in
go to
talks
Bali.
with Marriott. I think they're going to sponsor this.
Okay, here we go.
Excellent.
We're
Our
going to sit in the
first
Marriott lobbies around the world.
We-
The adult chair is coming to a location near you.
Right.
a lobby
Maybe we'll have some of the guests come down and we can work with the guests
There you
one-on-one.
go.
live
This-
at the,
this
at
could be
the
big.
check-in desk. That's perfect. I can
Right.
see it. This has been, it's one of the things I'm reflecting on as you guys talk, and clearly you have the vernacular and the language, and it's all well and good. But one of the things that I think is I've noticed, we've spent a couple of hours together this morning eating breakfast and all that. You guys are an incredibly good humored couple. Like, you are naturally funny and like kind with one another, and that is just really apparent that and I don't know if it's chicken or the egg thing, like, because you're so good at talking to one another that you are naturally you just, there's no weight that comes from hanging with you guys. There's no heaviness.
Thanks, Pete.
It's just there is right now, Graham. I feel like you just gained
Did I
about
just change my posture?
300 pounds.
No, not at all. No, I was going to say that for Michelle and I, when we're at our best together, and it's always easier when you've got a third person, you're having a conversation like this, but when we're at our best together, it is lighthearted. She is funny as heck. We have fun together. We're cutting up. As a matter of fact, yesterday we were with our two boys in downtown Seattle, and that's the way we felt. Like, everything was funny. Everything was easy. It was light. But yeah, I mean, I think you have to be in your adult chair as soon as, or maybe you're in a child chair, I don't know, but that adolescent chair, when things become personal between us, and again, I think I would call those the dips of the 7-year itch times or whatever, then it's just not fun anymore, and it is heavy. But no, I think when we're both in our adult chair and we're communicating on things, yeah, thank you. I do think we have a great ease about us together, and it is a lot of fun to be around her, and so I would agree with that.
Well, it's sure apparent in hanging out with you
Thank
guys.
you.
It's really clearly one of those sort of role model relationships you guys have. It's really, you have a lot to be proud of.
Thanks, Pete.
Obviously. Well done. So I think that's it. I think we can close up shop. You feel good about that?
I feel pretty good. Do you have anything else, Graham?
How weird is it hanging out live doing this?
It's so fun.
For reals. It's not even real.
So,
It's
as I said before we
Wake
started
up
this,
from
I'm
the
just
dream.
ready to have my show now. I like talking to
Nice.
Pete, so I just had to find something to talk about now.
Let's. We should say
The adult chair for men.
We have it's coming because Graham is I didn't know we may be separated at birth. We actually showed up wearing the same clothes
Just
And
about
ordered the same breakfast.
and ordered
and-
the exact same breakfast.
I've
the
always
only thing I would say
said
is he drinks more iced tea than I do with a whole lemon in each glass.
Yes.
I've
Yes.
never seen that.
You might have to step your game up.
I may have to.
And that means that
Long
he drinks
trip home.
coffee. You got it, Graham.
Okay.
That's my
right.
dream for Graham to start drinking coffee with me.
Oh yeah.
So, it's so nice to sit at the original Starbucks here in Seattle, have a little coffee with Graham. You will
Well,
not
let's
drink
just say-
coffee.
let's just
Starbucks
say-
is not sponsoring this
You will
show.
not drink coffee.
Her dream prior was for me to eat dessert after a nice dinner somewhere, and that put me on like a 3-month cheesecake binge. So I'm not exactly sure if she's ready for me to get into coffee.
I know.
I would be doing like
man.
double espressos 5 times a day.
We are way too similar for our own good. This has been great. Great having you both. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this, Graham.
Great meeting you in person,
Yeah.
Pete.
Thanks for
The man, the
driving
myth, the
3
legend.
hours just for us, Pete. Thank you.
3 hours. Well, your
My technology husband has
You're
met my real husband.
worlds collide.
That's right.
Yeah, the world's, and they even showed up the same.
Yeah.
Look the same. Kind of crazy.
And thank you, everybody, for joining us and listening to the show. We sure appreciate it. You can find out more at, just go to theadultchair.com. That's the easiest way to find it. Jump straight to the podcast page. You can subscribe for free in iTunes or now Google Play or Overcast or Pocket Cast, your podcast app of choice. You can find The Adult Chair.
And send in questions. Send in some questions. If anyone has questions, go to the website and write in.
You know what we're doing? We haven't even said anything to people.
What are we doing, Pete? Excuse me, what are you putting me up to?
That's right.
Pete's setting me up now.
You know what we're doing? Because Facebook's got its issues.
Yeah.
We've got this Facebook page where many people are members of this Facebook page. We're creating a Facebook group. It's a private group because we want to create a safe space to share stories and help one another. And so we're going to start talking more about that. The shell has been put together. And now we're going to get Michelle trained up on it.
Will I be doing live feeds on the closed group?
Whatever you want to do.
Okay.
I don't know what's going to happen.
I don't know.
You're going to be great.
Set the whole thing up and I'll just show up and do it.
Valhalla. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. On behalf of Graham and Michelle Chalfants, I'm Pete Wright. We'll catch you next time right here in The Adult Chair.